Today, after more than 100 days of war, the U.S. and Iran say they've reached a deal.
In a social media post, President Donald Trump declared the deal complete and told the ships of the world to start your engines, let the oil flow.
So what exactly was agreed, and who really comes out ahead? I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. Hey everyone, before we continue with today's show, remember to leave us a comment telling us what you think about this episode and what stories you want us to do next. And if you're listening on a podcast app, leave us a review telling us where you're listening from, and feel free to give us a 5-star rating while you're there. It helps the show. After this, it's audio only today, so sit back and enjoy the sound.
I'm Maziar Motamedi, and I'm Iran correspondent for Al Jazeera English Digital. I'm based in Tehran.
Maziar, welcome back to The Take. It's been too long. And speaking of long, at long last, we have a deal, or at least a memorandum of understanding.
U.S. and Iranian officials said that they've agreed on a framework to end months of war, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, and lift the U.S. blockade on Iran. The preliminary pact has sent oil prices falling, but leaves the fate of Iran's nuclear program to further negotiations.
We've heard U.S. President Donald Trump call this a great deal that will bring peace and security to the whole region. Both sides have signed the memorandum with an official signing ceremony due in Geneva on Friday. But what do Iranians think about this agreement?
I think it's important to point out that we're not at the finish line yet, not even close. So this thing is very ongoing, and it could still be months, if not longer. And things could be much more different by the end. So at this stage, it is, yes, an understanding, a deal with the US. Israel doesn't like it, but still, the deal has been signed. And the text isn't out yet, so we don't know everything, but it'll be out soon, according to Trump. So that's good. That has already had an impact on the local markets here. The national currency has strengthened a little bit. The capital market is growing. And the naval blockade will be lifted, or has already been partially lifted. So that could mean more goods coming into the country from Iran's southern ports. That could potentially have some impact on prices and on availability. There's no huge shortage right now, but more goods coming in more freely could regulate the market a little bit. But beyond that, the impact has been very negligent, because at the end of the day, this is not over yet. And Iran has had many structural issues in place that have exacerbated over years. So one interim understanding is not going to overnight make everything better.
You are speaking to me from Al Jazeera's bureau, right, in Tehran, the Iranian capital. And I know you've been out speaking to people in anticipation, and then, of course, about this memorandum. What have you been hearing from people?
Well, some people are hopeful. You have to have some hope at the end that this is going to work out somehow, or at least partially. There's going to be maybe some lifting of sanctions in the future. Maybe the economy will stabilize a little bit. Maybe we will not always be on the precipice of war or at war. But there's not too much room for optimism right now, because this deal isn't really liked by many people in the US, many people in Iran, many people certainly in Israel. So it could still go wrong, and the gains are limited. So some people are not very optimistic about the prospects that lay in the coming months. And on the other hand, you've got the supporters of the establishment here, and the hardliners, who are very much against this deal. They're saying it's a bad deal. They shouldn't have been signed. So they might create some roadblocks in the future. But for the regular people, they're still holding out to see what happens. Everybody is following the news very closely. So when Trump or Netanyahu or Iranian leaders say something, you can bet that many people here will know of it within seconds, minutes, and they're following up very closely.
Yeah.
But again, that doesn't mean that they expect great things to happen very soon. But now we're waiting to see what's going to happen.
And part of that waiting is because of the wild card in all of this, and that appears to be Israel. It's not a party to the Memorandum of Understanding, but it remains part of the war for sure, especially when it comes to Lebanon.
More than 3 months since the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran ignited conflict around the Middle East, Lebanon remains on the front line. Thousands have been killed, and Lebanon's health ministry says women, children, and medics make up hundreds of the fatalities. Authorities say around 1.2 million people have been displaced.
So on Monday night, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel won't leave occupied land in Lebanon.
Regarding Lebanon, we created a buffer zone, a security zone. We will stay there as long as necessary.
With Trump responding that the Israeli prime minister, quote unquote, has to be more responsible in Lebanon, and adding that he is not happy. How much of this agreement depends on Israel deciding to play along, and what happens if it doesn't?
Well, I think we can count on Israel not playing along to this one. And they've been saying it as much repeatedly pretty much every day through their top officials, through their military commanders. And I think that is also expected in Tehran and Washington as well. And they'll be advancing any deal despite Israeli influence pretty much. Although the US and Israel will, of course, be cooperating very closely, but it doesn't mean they're going to agree on everything. And Israel always has its own interests at heart. But for the Iranian leaders here, resistance is a main principle. So they've based their ideology for decades on this, and they've opposed the US and Israel, and particularly their regional influence. And they've come up with this axis of resistance of armed forces and allied groups across the region. And they've been operating against Israel and the US, and especially after the October 7th attack and the wars that have come since then. So they're not going to let that concept go, of course, and they've emphasized that Lebanon and peace on all fronts has to be part of this agreement with the US. So far we've seen some Israeli interference, especially on the day that the understanding was to be announced. Israel again attacked the suburbs of Beirut in an apparent attempt to draw out some sort of response from Iran. And by the looks of it, Iranian forces and the IRGC were prepared to launch some more projectiles toward Israel, which could have in turn led to more attacks and a restart of war. But it didn't happen. They released statements that it would be forthcoming, but it didn't happen. And the understanding was announced pretty much soon after that. So it does appear that there was some last minute back and forth going on. And Iranian media say that Trump gave Iran an advantage in trying to lift the blockade immediately rather than after 30 days as a concession for Iran not to attack Israel and start this whole thing again. I imagine there will be some more back and forth negotiations and last minute mediation like that to try to prevent Israel from sabotaging this deal or from preventing a number of things that could go wrong.
Yeah. Okay, so what do we know about what is in the deal? Because as you mentioned, the memorandum was announced, but it was not released to the public. And we hear it should happen within 24, 48 hours. So who knows? What do we know about what is actually being agreed on?
Well, the way I see it, the main thing is the Strait of Hormuz right now and the naval blockade. And that's pretty much the only thing that both sides are saying that it's going to happen. And partly it may have already started with some more ships going through the Strait of Hormuz, and by Friday and the days after that is expected to increase. So that's the main achievement for both sides for now, at least. And that's why this was not an issue back when the war started. The Strait of Hormuz was open.
Right. Maziar, so I have to pause you there because I think that's the part that confuses all the rest of us lay people, right? It sounds like we're just getting back to the status quo, an agreement that is being hailed as this victory in the U.S. by the Trump administration, but an agreement that actually takes us back to where we were before the U.S. and Israel launched this war.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same status quo as before, but yes, Iran was saying for decades and was threatening that it could potentially disrupt or close down the Strait of Hormuz. In fact, the hardliners in Tehran, one of their main lines whenever something serious happened was that, hey, let's close down the Strait of Hormuz and exit the NPT, the nuclear non-proliferation treaty. But after it was actually done, so the whole world actually had to face it, and it had very real ramifications. And it disrupted global energy markets, and it's raising daily cost of life for many people across the world. And of course, it's had a lot of repercussions for Iranians, but things were already dire here before. So we were already dealing with some 70% inflation. Some staples have quadrupled in price over the past year or over the past few months, actually. So it's not going to be a return to what it was before. But yes, this is a strategic waterway that needs to be open. Now, Iran says we want to exercise our sovereignty over it. This is our territorial waters, and that's of Oman. We're going to perhaps monetize this. Maybe we're not calling it a toll, but maybe those passing will have to pay some sort of a fee for environmental issues, for transit issues. And this was something that Iran was doing freely before. That is the argument here, at least. So if you wanted to go back for these 2 months, it's going to be free. But maybe after that, we'll see what happens through a regional dialogue, which is key because a lot of regional countries are affected by this. China is affected by this, not just the US. And on the other hand, the naval blockade is indeed affecting Iranians. I think Iranian officials don't talk about it that much, and it's not exactly quantifiable as much as it is for other countries. But Iran does definitely need to have that blockade lifted.
Yeah. What about Iran's nuclear program, since that was one of the key reasons that the Trump administration gave for launching this war in the first place? What do we know about what that represents in this new deal?
Well, if you listen to the hardliners in Tehran, they say that maybe we don't even need to talk about it anymore. It's resolved, you know. I mean, we've made some new achievements. We've stood our ground, and we don't really need to give concessions, at least not like we did before. Especially with the whole scene changing now as well. Iran's nuclear facilities, pretty much all of them, all of the main ones, have been either destroyed or heavily damaged. And there is the highly enriched uranium, which is buried inside the nuclear facilities. And Trump may call it nuclear dust, but still it will need to have some sort of mechanism in place if it is to be retrieved. It's going to need technical equipment, heavy equipment. It's going to need time. It's going to need experts on the ground. So I think it's become clear that it can't be done through military force alone. It will have to come through some sort of a negotiation. But still, nobody knows what's going to happen. Iran still insists that some sort of enrichment will need to take place on Iranian soil. Maybe not now, maybe in a few years, maybe after some sort of suspension. This is while Trump was previously saying no enrichment on Iranian soil, and it does look like he's stepped down from that a little bit. He's saying maybe 20 years suspension, maybe 15 years, who knows. And the uranium, again, it needs to be taken out, and it needs to be diluted. And that's an offer that Iranian officials have also made. So it's out of the question for them that this uranium is just going to be extracted and taken out of the country entirely, moved to the US or moved to any other country, because there is this belief here that like other countries that gave up this sort of leverage, then they were attacked after that, no matter what sort of agreement they did or what sort of concessions they made.
Maziar, earlier you said we're not going to see any immediate ramifications of this memorandum of understanding and then this deal. And yet one of the major selling points for the U.S. has been in announcing that there's victory, right? The Strait of Hormuz is reopening, markets are rallying, oil prices are falling. But in Iran, how quickly could ordinary people begin to feel like, okay, the war is over?
I fear that with ordinary people, it's still going to be a long time. For the officials, similar to the US, it's already been victory or partial victory, at least. They have used the word victory many times, and they have said that the US and Israel were dealt many defeats. But I guess that's open to interpretation on both sides and depends on what they mean by that and what their goals were. But for the average Iranian, I doubt that for most people, at least right now, it feels like a victory. You have huge inflation. You're still isolated from the global economy. I've lost count of how many times I've tried to, log into some sort of service or sign up for something. And you go check the list of countries and you find Iraq and you find Isle of Man and Ireland, but Iran is pretty much never there. And you want to send money to someone, you want to talk to someone, you want to use social media, it's blocked. You have to use VPNs, and the list goes on and on. So I doubt that it feels like a victory to most people living in Iran right now.
Yeah. Thank you for that context. I want to shift gears just a little bit because while all of this is unfolding, Iran's national team was actually just here in the city where I am in Los Angeles in the United States for the World Cup, coming from behind twice to draw 2-2 with New Zealand in a pretty exciting game that also saw protests. And it feels like this surreal contrast. On one hand, we're talking about diplomacy and conflict, which are dominating the headlines. And on the other hand, Iranians are being represented on one of the world's largest stages. How are people in Iran experiencing that disconnect?
I suppose a lot of people obviously love football and they would love to have a team Melli, a national team that they can always support and watch. But it hasn't been that simple over recent years due to the events that have taken place inside Iran. And the Iranians abroad are mostly opposed to the Islamic Republic. So whenever there's this events taking place outside Iran, you have some people going there to protest. And of course, they represent themselves with another flag, the lion and sun flag, whereas the flag of the Islamic Republic has the word Allah in the center. So there's that difference in ideology and the values that it represents for different people. So at the end of the day, a football match that everybody should be loving and enjoying and just, backing their team turns into this whole complex issue where everybody says, my side is right, because of this, because of this. The other side says, no, you're too extremist. The country has a flag, the country has a team, and you should support it regardless. And if you listen to the players, mostly they've been trying to distance themselves from this. They're saying that we represent a team, we represent a nation, we try to play for all. It's not going to happen, but we at the end of the day, we play football. So yeah, and everybody gets close to one political faction and then may have some supporters, some Iranians abroad might be supported by US officials, maybe represented in some statements by European officials, but then people here are more silenced perhaps than the ones out abroad because of internet disconnections, because of all this chaos here and different media representations. So most of the people inside Iran, I think, don't have the platform that they deserve and that they need to get their word out there. But yeah, it's a very complex situation, and football and politics have gone more intertwined over recent years, even though everybody's saying they should be separate. But what are you going to do? I mean, it's just a war with many stakeholders and not a united sound coming from people inside Iran, people outside Iran, politicians on all sides. So it was expected, and it's a bitter situation, but I doubt it's going to get any better.
Well, I want to end with the point that you just raised, which is that this is a war with many stakeholders. So bringing us back to what we might be able to expect this week when we see the two sides, the two parties meeting in Geneva on Friday. if you were to sum up where we actually are, what do you think this deal changes going forward? And what does it not change?
I think both sides do need still a victory narrative. And they've, again, had some sort of achievements as defined by the authorities. But they would need to extend that and entrench it if they indeed are going to reach some sort of a resolution that keeps both of them in place. I mean, Donald Trump has, or hasn't really wanted regime change if you listen to him one day to the next.
Yeah.
First, he did want regime change. Obviously, Netanyahu wants regime change, and they came in, and it looks like they believe that they could quickly reach some conclusion here, get some results, especially with eliminating Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei and a bunch of top military and security and political leaders. But then the plan appeared to change after a while, after a couple of weeks, when the Islamic Republic didn't immediately fall and it managed to gain some sort of a foothold in the Strait of Hormuz. And then Trump started saying, no, I never really wanted regime change. Maybe that was Israel all along. And maybe we've already had regime change in Iran. You know, we peeled off 2 layers. We're dealing with the so-called third layer, which he says is more moderate, which it doesn't seem to be backed by much evidence here. But either way, they would need to back all of this talk with some sort of results that goes beyond just, you know, bringing down oil prices a little bit or just containing the situation for the moment. On the nuclear issues, again, the main topics will be enrichment and the high enriched materials. For Iran, it will be sanctions, and it will be tens of billions of Iranian money frozen abroad. And it doesn't seem like that's happening right now. Trump saying that it will all depend on performance, on what happens in the coming months. But it does not look like the US is prepared to peel back all these layers of sanctions that it has imposed over the past decades, unless there's a really big resolution at the end. And that doesn't seem within reach to me, at least not now, because we haven't seen that level of serious negotiation, the technical talks, and the political will that is required to resolve a complex issue such as this. So for now, it's band-aids with solutions, just carrying this on, maybe carrying us through the World Cup, see what happens after that. But I expect they will sit down and talk, and they will start technical negotiations. But after a short while, it will get to a rocky place where the Iranians will emphasize that they're not going to just abandon the nuclear program, and they will require some money and some sanction relief for this to actually work.
And that's The Take. This episode was produced by Marcos Bartolomé and Tamara Khandaker, with Spencer Cline, Sonia Bhagat, Jana Dabliz, and me, Malika Bilal. It was edited by Noor Wazwaz and Sarí el-Khalili. Our sound designer is Alex Roldan. Our video editors are Hisham and Mohannad al-Melhem. And Alexandra Locke is The Take's executive producer. We'll be back.